Before I start, good afternoon. Basically, we're here in reference to Gypsy, which is the first case. She is a pit bull, age 4 years old. This was an animal attack / human. I went ahead and put everything together for you as far as color. I'll pass that forward, medical records. Also, the dog in question is back home. There was a full inspection done at the property. And I do have pictures of her, and I do have pictures of the well, not the location, but Mrs. Frye's residence, so you can see it's an aerial view. Lisa. If you like, I'll continue.
Okay.
So on August 12th, 2019, Animal Care and Control received a bite exposure report from Police Communications that a Mr. Michael Frye was bitten by a dog belonging to a Catherine Kennedy during an animal attack on August 11, 2019. Spoke to Ms. Catherine Kennedy, and she advised that her dog was severely attacked by a pit bull being walked by Mr. Frye on August 11, 2019, and was treated at the emergency vet hospital in Annapolis for a severe injury and a partial tear and needed surgery. During the investigation, spoke to Ms. Kennedy about the animal attack bite incident. Ms. Kennedy advised that it was approximately 10:40. She was walking her dog Mia, which is a Chesapeake Bay Retriever, and pushing her son in his stroller down Oak Grove Circle. There was 2 dogs, and owners stopped on the opposite sides of the street about a car length apart, talking to each other. Mr. Frye and Gypsy were farther away from them. She advised that she was walking and about a car length away from the closer dog and the owner when Gypsy pulled away from Mr. Frye and ran over to Mia and bit her on her neck and near her ear. She advised that none of the dogs had barked or growled at each other prior to the attack. Mr. Frye ran over and tried to grab his dog and pull her dog off Mia. Eventually, Mr. Frye was able to get her off. He then ran back to his house with the dog. Ms. Kennedy advised that he had a bite on his hand and wanted to get the dog away. His house was a few houses down the street. Ms. Kennedy advised that 2 people came out of their house when they heard the noise. She explained that at this point, the neighbors helped her get her son's stroller off the ground and to look him over and make sure he was okay. During the incident, his stroller had gotten knocked over. She explained that her son bumped his head and had a small scratch on his knee, but was okay. The neighbor Pam helped her walk towards the house with her son and Mia. She advised that Mr. Frye came back on his bike and asked if they were okay. She asked about his hand. She advised that he did go for medical, for his hand. Ms. Kennedy explained that when they came inside, Mia was limping and had a wet neck. With her fur being a Chessie, it was hard to see any wounds at first. Mr. Frye's wife came to the door shortly after, and they exchanged numbers. Ms. Kennedy's daughter found a wound on Mia's neck, so they took her to the AVAC emergency vet hospital to be looked at. The vet shaved her, cleaned out her puncture wound. The vet could not tell what was wrong with her knee and gave pain meds. The next day, Mia had significant pulling under the puncture wound, so they went to the Chesapeake Center for surgery and had a drain placed, and she received sutures. While she was sedated, the vet examined her knee and found that she had a partial tear of her CCL. Ms. Kennedy was advised about Mr. Frye's bite that he sustained from her dog Mia during the separation, and her dog was placed under quarantine at home. Spoke to Mr. Frye about the incident and asked about his injury, and he advised that he was bitten during trying to separate the dogs, and her dog bit him. He advised that he was treated and received 3 sutures on his left hand. I asked Mr. Frye if he could send me a statement of the incident. I received the statement, and Mr. Frye advised that he was walking his daughter's dog, Gypsy. He was about to round the corner of Oak Grove Circle when a woman with a baby carriage and an older Chesapeake Bay Retriever was rounding the same corner. He advised that he was drinking coffee, and he switched hands. Gypsy pulled out of his grasp to greet the other dog. He advised that the dog ran behind her, pulling her around. As she spun around to the dog fight, the baby carriage fell over with them noticing, and that the dog started fighting. He explained that both dogs had each other. Gypsy had a hold of their dog mostly by the ear. He advised that they tugged at the dogs to get them apart, during which time Pat Bellotti heard the yelling, came out, saw the baby in the street, picked up the baby. They did not realize that he was in the street. He explained that as he looked at the baby, her dog then bit him in the hand. When they turned the attention to the child, both dogs stopped. He pointed to her where I think it's supposed to be said left, and then he went to the hospital. On August 16, 2019, Animal Care and Control impounded Gypsy under public safety investigation. On August 20, 2019, I received a witness statement from a Miss Michelle Kendris of Oak Grove Circle, whom witnessed the incident. Miss Kendris advised that she was walking her dog Duke down Oak Grove Circle when she came upon Mr. Frye walking his daughter Audrey's Frye dog Gypsy. He advised that she knew Mr. Frye and his family and was familiar with Gypsy from encountering them during prior walks. She explained that Gypsy had never shown aggression towards her dog Duke, though Mr. Frye's daughter had previously cautioned her to take care because she wasn't sure how Gypsy would react. On this occasion, Mr. Frye and she allowed the dogs to sniff each other, but separated them before they could get into a play. Both dogs were on leashes. They got into a conversation and they stood on opposite sides of the road. As they were talking, Catherine was walking towards them with her baby in a stroller and her dog was on a leash. As they approached their position in the road, but still a good 10 feet away, all of a sudden Gypsy suddenly and then with no warning charged, breaking free from Mr. Frye's hand. Mr. Frye shouted and ran after her, and by the time she turned to see what was happening, in that split second, Gypsy had her teeth into the other dog's neck. Catherine was still holding her dog on its leash, trying to pull back. Mr. Frye was grabbing for Gypsy, trying to pull her off. In the commotion, the stroller toppled over. At that point, she went to attend to the crying baby as best as she could with her dog Duke with her. Another neighbor came out to help the stroller upright and make sure that the baby was okay. Catherine didn't realize that this happened due to the attack and the commotion. Ms. Kendris did advise in her statement that it was important to know that Gypsy went for the dog, not the stroller. Spoke to Gypsy's owner, Mrs. Audrey Frye, and she was advised of the incident and went over the public safety law with her and explained the orders that the case would be reviewed. After full review of that case file, Animal Care and Control did issue the dangerous order on Gypsy and means to protect the public under Article 12, 402, paragraph 3 and 5 under public safety, and 403 under the county code, which defines dangerous animals. August 26 of 2019, Ms. Frye did file an appeal. On August 27th, an inspection was performed at the property of 752 Oak Grove Circle with the conditions that were placed on Gypsy at the property, and the inspection was completed. Mrs. Frye was in compliance with all conditions and Gypsy was released. Do you want to add anything?
My only concern is that something like this doesn't happen again. It was very traumatic for me because my son was there. And thankfully he wasn't walking himself. You know, he's almost 2, so sometimes we walk the dog without the stroller, and I just worry if a kid was walking their dog and this had happened and it wasn't an adult on the other end of the leash, that things could have been a lot worse than they were, and I'm very grateful that they weren't more than a bump on my son. You know, I'm sorry. That's my biggest hope in all of this.
Before we get to the defendant, I have one question. Obviously, you're in full compliance with the order.
Yes.
And the dog's been released to you. What is it you're challenging so we can take that into account while we listen to your testimony?
We would like this dropped to a warning. That doesn't mean we're getting rid of the requirements. We want to keep the insurance. We have a fence. We keep the dog on a fence. We're awake, meaning we pay attention. I pay attention now. This is my fault, the whole thing. The only thing we want to get rid of is this giant steel kennel in the backyard, which we don't use. We have the dog on a run. You know, we're awake. But I'd like it dropped to a warning because I told Audrey that if it stays a dangerous dog, I'd like to I don't want the liability, I want the dog out of the house. She's in college, it affects a lot of things. So we want to see if we can't work this out.
Officer Thomas, between the dangerous order and the warning, there's still a potentially dangerous in between there, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Does the potentially dangerous order require the kennel?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Go ahead.
It can or it can't, it depends, right? You can put any conditions with any of the order.
The standard order would be a kennel and stuff like that, but there could be a clause, but it would have to be up to you to issue that.
I'll speak first, because this is all my fault. You know, I'm allergic to dogs. I didn't like dogs. She moves in with 2 dogs. I grew to love them. We walk those dogs every day. I think Gypsy's older than 4.5 years. I'm sitting there talking to a neighbor, and I'll try to make it quick. I'm talking to a neighbor, we're chit-chatting. My guard is way down. I'm sitting there with a coffee. Catherine comes around, minding her own business. She comes around with the stroller. I don't see her dog. I didn't see it, or I'd have been more awake, but I just saw the stroller because the dog was on the far side of it. The dog was where Catherine and the stroller are coming around. I'm sitting here. My other neighbor with the dog isn't really across the street. She's there, and we're just sitting, chit-chatting. Catherine comes around all of us. And when I switch hands, Gypsy bolts. And she does bolt, but she loves dogs. And Audrey has, you know, I don't know, tons of pictures, examples. That our dumb dog went over to just smell it, to play, to lick it, to say hi. And it was abrupt. And Catherine's dog did what she should. She's protecting Catherine and a baby and doesn't understand what's going on. And these dogs just, it's like this in a second. It seemed like it was an hour, but it was probably a 45-second dog fight. I looked at the pictures and I saw them before. And Catherine and I don't want to speak for Catherine, but we do not know how, I don't know how to break up a dog fight. I made every mistake in the book. I'm pulling the leash and I'm pulling the collar and I can see my dog. You know, again, they got each other like this and it's pulling the ear and I don't know what to do. I screwed up with this thing. It's really all my mistake, but the point I want to make is that this was an even match. It's a Chesapeake Bay Retriever. They're same size dogs. Both of them got cut up. Both of them got hurt a little bit. I believe most of that is from us pulling while the dogs got each other. As soon as we realized the baby was flipped over, Catherine and I turned our attention to that. A neighbor yelled, "There's a baby in the street." We turned our attention, they stopped fighting. As soon as they stopped fighting, I had the dog by the leash. Her dog bit my hand. I was like shaking. Anyway, so here's what I wanted to say. Everything I did was wrong breaking up that dog fight. We walk our dogs. We have 3 of them. My wife walks the heck out of them. Those dogs get walked 3 times a day. Gypsy's about 5 years old. I calculated about 4,500 dog walks. This is the first time something like this ever happened. It's never, you know, I mean, I think the officer will agree that dog never growled at her when they took it away. It never growled in that pen you guys have for 2 weeks. It's never touched, threatened, growled at a human before. It did bite Catherine's dog, which was unfortunate, but my point is that it happened once in 4,500 dog walks. That's 2-3 times a day, 2.5 times a day. We don't walk it all winter long when it's super cold. I dropped the leash at the exact wrong time. The dog has many friends. Dog used to hang out with our cat, you know, our late cat. He's 18 years old and gone. But it's just a mismatch. If that dog weren't a pit mix, we wouldn't even be sitting here today. You know, I think there's some kind of bias towards that. Both dogs are fine now, and I screwed up, but not the dog. So we'd like it, you know. And I felt this was kind of a fair match because when I got bit, that dog didn't have a rabies shot. I had to get tetanus shots. My hand got this big. I have the bloody pictures here. I had to get stitches and sutures. And then I had to get tetanus shots. I had to go through the county thing. They were sending me email or letters about the rabies, you know, not having a rabies vaccine. So I'm sorry. I felt like we kind of had a clean wash here. You know, it's a mistake. It's my mistake, 100%. But I felt like we need a warning, not a, you know, I think I made a mistake, but it wasn't the dog. Audrey, anything?
Yes.
I do understand the damage that was done to the other dog, and that is unfortunate. But I've had Gypsy for 3 years, 3+ years, and I knew her owners before, so I knew her even before that. And I've done research and I've done training with her myself, besides going to a professional, because, you know, that's very expensive to do it right. And I know the stigma behind pit bulls, so I never even let her get into situations like this, just because I am very aware of the situation, and my dad wasn't. And, you know, that's lesson learned for him. And she has never been aggressive towards humans or other dogs. I think she just was acting in defense because the other dog went for her first, which is acceptable. That's what a dog should do if it's protecting its family.
Objection, she wasn't there.
Okay.
It's what I said.
Yeah, it's what he said. And and that's basically it.
Anything else either party wants to add?
The only thing that I wanted to add is basically I have an outside witness, and I read her statement advising that Gypsy was attacking the other dog.
The witness, are you talking about Michelle? May I ask a question in that?
Yes.
Yeah, Michelle was the one who was talking with you.
Right, and Michelle said that she didn't see it until she, you know, it took her a second to react. If you look at her statement, she didn't watch
Oh,
them
no, I understand
live.
that, but I mean, she clearly stated that Gypsy was attacking that dog.
They
You know,
were,
that was the
they were
concern.
like this.
And Catherine can vouch for this, basically, because when I spoke to her, she basically stated that Mr. Frye was not immediately right there when the confrontation took place.
I was staring right at the conflict. I really was. I was right there looking at it.
So I'm pushing my son in the stroller. The dog, he's on the same side, this side of the street. The dog crosses the street, because we're kind of towards the middle, but a little bit more to the left side, comes around and just grabs my dog by the neck. I wish my dog could take credit for defending us. It was not I'm defending my family. She had no clue. You know, and as Gypsy came around, that's when I'm turned, and that's why my back is towards my son at that point. So then Mike has to come, run up, and then grab a hold of his dog. And since the order's been in place, there was one day he had a muzzle on it, but not the harness, which just makes me very nervous that this is in place and you're not complying with it 100%.
I think another reason why basically the agency, felt it was necessary for dangerous soil conditions, understanding that you guys have a right to lower it to a potential dangerous, was the fact that this situation happened so fast that understanding that the dog or the dogs were not going for the stroller, we had an incident with a stroller being flipped over because we have, basically a dog that gets away from its owner and goes up and causes an incident to take place. I mean, this child could have been very injured severely by coming out of a stroller. This agency basically wants the dog to succeed. That's our whole objective here. Understanding that the stipulations are there, basically not only just to protect Audrey from liability, but it's also to maintain Gypsy in a manner that she cannot get away from anybody again if she's, dog aggressive or dog reactive. As far as his statement claiming basically that the fact it's a pit bull issue, that's not the case. This is not a stereotypical agency. If this could be a lab, this could be a German Shepherd, this could be, a beagle, whatever the case may be, we'd still be sitting right here in the same courtroom if there was an appeal or an order issue.
Any of the commissioners have questions before we proceed? Unless you have anything more, we're gonna close for, oh, go ahead.
Gypsy has never attacked a dog unprovoked. Besides what they are saying, that has never happened in the years I've had her ever. Like, she's like pulled on a leash to go sniff a dog, but has never been. It's never been in an aggressive manner. So that's it.
These are two evenly matched dogs. You know, Catherine, I mean, when we were finished, Catherine, I believe Catherine told me that her dog has been aggressive. And I'm not blaming that dog, it's my fault. But I'm just saying, two evenly matched dogs, this isn't like a run and grab a little dog and shake it or anything like that. And that damage was caused by us pulling them apart by the leash, which was a mistake. And again, one thing we learned, and it's, you know, good advice, is learn how to break up a dog fight before a dog fight, not after.
Anything else? Commissioners, questions before we close for deliberations? Okay, we are closed for deliberations.
I understand what she's saying is that the dog broke away from the leash. And so what she's saying is he wasn't there to see it right away, he's within vicinity, but with the breakaway, so he didn't see the initial contact, is what they're saying. I mean, there's not like a long history of it, with the damage there. To his point, they were equally matched in terms of damage to each dog. However, it seems like the breakaway part, unfortunate as it was, if we ever broke away again, it could happen again, is the thought process for me. So just preventing that breakaway. It's a mistake, but you know, we need to set Gypsy up for success, because it's us humans that make mistakes, and then they just are dogs. Whether they one time just don't like another dog, and then the other dog is just defending itself, equally matched, but still, how can we set Gypsy up for success so that she doesn't have the opportunity again, is everything that they're in compliance with. Right. Because there's no history of any other pet or dog aggression, I mean, I'd feel comfortable lowering it to a potential dangerous instead of a dangerous order. And that allows us to keep those secondary barriers that they've already been compliant with and seem responsible with. I'd also be willing to, you know, it's a kind of this unfortunate incident that who could have predicted was gonna happen. But now we have to predict the prevention of it, and that's what we're trying to do. So I would say if there was some requests to lower it to a potentially dangerous, to minimize stigma, but keep upholding the barriers in public safety. But then if they didn't want we could maybe make the pen in the back, because the incident happened out in the yard and this and that, doesn't seem to be a leash walking situation versus their backyard containment situation. So could we be lenient on some things like that and make some amendments? I'm up for that. So I could look at the order.
I was actually thinking the same thing. If we could just reduce it down to potential.
What do you guys think?
I second that.
I agree with the potentially dangerous, lower, maybe modify with about the kennel in the backyard. I just read through dangerous and potentially dangerous as it appears in the law.
Right.
And it's really not that much of a difference.
No, there isn't.
It's really,
It gives us some movement to
yes,
understand a one-time situation, but like we don't want this dog to be
right,
deemed dangerous.
Right. There's no history.
Right, right. I agree. Like a varying degree of things, right? I like that idea.
I think we're all leaning towards reducing it to a PDO with the exclusion of the requirement for the kennel in the backyard. Do we have a motion?
And,
Anything else that we?
I mean, they specifically asked for it to be a warning,
A
right?
warning,
So,
right.
That's, I understand,
Yeah.
right. I think we're all in agreement, potentially dangerous. I mean, just because of the nature of this particular incident, I think number 2, they didn't ask for it, but I'm willing to look at it if it's something
Right.
you would
Absolutely.
think about.
Yeah, because it's not an escape out of the house, out the front door situation, but, or as, people in the
Or,
home.
right,
Right,
right.
so number 2 is confined in a crate in a key locked room inside the owner's residence whenever non-family members or juveniles are in the home. So like Thanksgiving, they got family over, the dog has to stay locked up in a room. I mean, I don't think we need that. They haven't asked for these things, but can we help in some way?
You're already complying with them. You gave a look on your face like you didn't even know that this was one of the requirements.
We don't have a prison in our house with a dog. With the dog.
She has a crate and I lock her in my room when I go.
I mean,
Okay.
continue the same practices, and, you know, but we, yeah, obviously,
But the-
right, but to.
Secondary barriers, I
No.
saw the photos of secondary barriers at every entrance and exit, at the bottom of the deck stairs as well,
Yep.
Mhm.
seems sufficient to control Gypsy and set her up for success. Other than that, we already have a 6-foot fence in place,
Right.
right? So we don't need, to have the run in the back, the kennel in the back. But otherwise, you know, when walking on a muzzle and the double leash with the carabiners, I think that applies fully. But we're just trying to be as lenient as we possibly can and make accommodations for Gypsy to be successful. So what number is that one?
Which one?
The, so is it 3, where it talks about the kennel part?
A modification of 3?
Yeah, modification to 3. No requirement for an outdoor kennel enclosure with the anti-digging devices and all that jazz, so we'll take care of that. 6-foot fence should be sufficient. Is that okay?
Make a motion?
Anything else? I think that's good, right?
Mhm.
Feel good on that?
Are we doing 2 and?
Yeah,
Right,
2,
okay.
strike 2 and
So,
so I'll make
yep.
I move to reduce the dangerous order to a potentially dangerous order, striking item 2 and modifying item 3 to not require an outdoor kennel facility.
A second.
All in favor? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.